Hi YouTube, Darth here. This is Over Your Shoulder, a series where I follow unsuspecting players and give what is usually unsolicited advice. This week I'm back to Battlefield 4 and spectating Ravatver, a player whose name I'm probably butchering who is also a level 140 with a huge volume of time put into the game. Rav has spent 1800 hours playing the game and over 200 of those in jets. As I follow over Rav's shoulder today, I'll call out all the good things, the bad things, and the things I might do differently. So let's take a peek over Rav's shoulder. And after a short delay, it looks like Rav finally wants to play the game. Looks like we have an AKU-12 with a coyote, a suppressor, and a vertical grip. Looks like we're going to be doing a little bit of hipfire with this weapon. The AKU-12 is one of those carbines that's really good that seems to get left in the dust a lot after people unlock other weapons. It's very accurate and I consider it to be a headshot machine, but if we're not careful here, those headshots really won't matter with the boats coming in. Looks like Rav has an RPG, probably not the weapon I'd pick for this particular map. Takes a shot at this boat while getting shot at, seems to miss it, and that's really sort of the problem with the RPG on this map. Because of those long distances you have to shoot things over and the inability to sort of peek behind cover after you've taken your shot, the RPG doesn't really hold up as well as it does in the city map. Now he has low health here, I'd probably stick to the ground and try to regenerate some so I don't get picked off that easily. Alright, it looks like we are finally in a jet where we wanted to be in the first place. Rav went 26-1 the last game. It looks like we're about to come up with this Su-50 here. Doing a lot of shooting, getting some use out of that belt feeder. On his jet, he has a 25mm laser-guided belt feeder and an ECM jammer. He just took that guy out. With some easy aim. He's got an attack jet on his tail, but that should be a pretty easy target to take out once we get the turn down here. Taking the turn a little bit fast, not quite coming up with him yet. This long outside turn is going to be the doom of that attack jet though. And there it is lined up. 12 o'clock avoids the ram from the attack jet. Always want to try and avoid the ram if you can at 12 o'clock. I generally don't try to engage targets at that particular head-on collisions possibility because so many of them end up in rams. Finally getting behind this guy. This is going to be an easy takeout. Looks like he punched the chute. Doesn't quite come up with the roadkill. Now we've got complete air superiority and it's time to drop some laser-guided bombs on our enemies here. Get a couple of hits on that boat. This is actually a really good map to have laser guided on because you can get a lot of action against the boats that are on this map. And it looks like his team's in a really good position here with the complete map under control and the last point being taken. So he's really going to rack up a lot of kills here in the jet. And it looks like we have our first catch of the day here with this scout helicopter. Now occasionally you'll get a really good scout helicopter player that will cause a lot of trouble for jets on this map. If that happens, or if you have a really good stealth jet pilot, you'll probably want to switch to some anti-air missiles. The bonus is that you can help keep the skies clean, but you give up that anti-ground power, which means you can often fly around on this map pretty bored. Conversely, if you're in the scout helicopter and you're really good at aiming those miniguns, you can do a lot of damage against these aircraft. And you can see here just how difficult it is to land those shots on that small scout helicopter. After the winter patch gave them a little bit more maneuverability, it's even harder now than it was before. One of the key lessons you're going to have to learn if you become a stealth jet driver is that you have to be very patient. Sometimes your kills are going to take a lot of time, sometimes you'll spend minutes or what seems like hours circling in a dogfight. If you're looking for players to attack, having a button bound to that full map is certainly going to help. Looks like we're trying to take a strafing run on that infantry, doesn't quite come up with it. Definitely don't press the issue if you can't come up with that infantry kill, as it is pretty much the hardest thing to hit in the entire battlefield. And it looks like we have a respawn finally coming up. This would be a great opportunity for the enemy team to take him out while he's busy lining up this laser-guided shot. And this is actually a maneuver I've caught a lot of pilots in from time to time. They'll be launching laser-guided Zord TV missiles and just not be paying attention to the current status of where the enemy aircraft are, or particularly me, and it's a simple matter of lining up guns or missiles on them, and they're pretty much out of luck at that point. But it doesn't look like the enemy pilots that are facing Rav or the enemy team in general are very competent, so it's not going to be a problem in this case. But in general, when you're in a vehicle facing off against enemy vehicles and you have the advantage that you have cleared them from the map, you're going to want to keep a mental timer of what's going on and how long it's been since you last took those vehicles out. When that timer goes off, you should be thinking to yourself, I should be looking at the map, looking around and trying to figure out when these vehicles are going to come up again. And here's the strength of the laser-guided missiles on the naval strike maps. You always have this great supply of boats that you can just obliterate at any time. There isn't a whole lot that boat captains can do against orbiting jets. Burst on the boats is a much more effective option against helicopters than it is jets. Now I have killed the occasional stupid attack jet with my burst guns on the boats, but they have to be really dumb and line themselves up to get taken out. But if you're careful in the jets, you really don't have to worry about much other than the other jets on naval strike maps. Looks like we're maybe overcommitting to getting these laser guys off once they come off of cooldown, and we just got a surface-to-air missile shot at us. The ECM failed to deflect it, and Rav almost ate to death there on the poor timing from the ECM. It's great at stopping locks before they happen, not so much once they are on your tail. I feel like he's a little bit confused looking around for that boat, starting to get hit a bit in the butt, doing a little bit of health regen here, gets flashed by an enemy and taken out. So Rav's jet run was pretty good, but he got taken out by ECM, not quite countering a missile that was already in flight. So now we're going to do a little bit of boating action, and it looks like the US team is quite a bit up on the Russian team still. This game's probably going to end up being a blowout out of about 600 tickets to nothing would be my guess. Let's see what we're running on our boat here. We got 30mm, TV-guided missile, a belt feeder, active protection, and thermal optics. In other words, he's a battleship meant for destroying other boats. If any helicopters show up, he's going to have a hard time taking them out unless he uses a TV missile, which is going to have to be a very lucky shot. I used to run the 30mm more on my boat, but I've switched more over to the 25mm because I feel it's a little bit easier shot at range. Otherwise, I run with the burst in order to take out enemy aircraft, particularly on Wavebreaker because there's so many helicopters, and then there's the attack helicopter as well, which can be a real problem to the boat. For taking out enemy boats, I usually use that TV-guided missile in order to take them out, while using the burst cannons to sort of follow it up. It looks like we're trying to use the TV-guided missile here to take out that helicopter. It doesn't quite hit it as the AA in the base takes out that TV-guided missile. Kind of misses it there, overshoots it. That's probably where I would eject from the missile just so I can follow up. At any time, if you need to eject from your missile because you've gone too far, you can always hit the E key on PC. Be careful of doing this too late though, as several times I've jumped out of my boat at inopportune times. By jumping out of the missile when you overshoot it, it lets you shoot another missile in retaliation much more quickly. As for right now, Rav's sort of cruising around without much of a purpose. I'd probably be looking at my maps to try and figure out where I should be going to next. It looks like we're trying to hit up this point that's currently being taken by our friendly players with a lot of enemy teammates still inside. That particular shot wouldn't work on the CTE because of the way they changed the TV missile physics, so you would have hit the boat there. So you got to be careful with that in upcoming patches. But for now, shooting through the conning tower of your own boat still works. Looks like we're trying to get a shot in on that. I don't think you can blow up the walls with TV missiles, but you can do it with the guns. So you might be able to take this building down, which is probably what I would be trying to do here. We can definitely see that there's a number of enemies in there, so it probably would definitely help us to take out those walls and just bring the whole thing down on them. A little bit of wave action going on. Still lots more enemies all over that. That TV missile is not going to be very effective against infantry. I don't think it has a whole lot of splash damage. Taking a look at the tabletop here, we can see that we don't really have any threats, so we have plenty of time to deal with the infantry with guns. One more TV-guided missile off, doesn't quite catch anything, maybe trying to take out that launcher over there. Again, I'd probably be trying to take out this building simply because not only will you collapse it and kill everybody inside, you also take out any spawn beacons that might also be inside, which is something you can easily miss if you're trying to just kill infantry. So now we can see that that attack boat is up and coming out of their enemy spawn, so I'd probably be considering lobbing TV missiles at it. I'd probably get in a good position to do that. Maybe get a little bit further away from that infantry because now you pissed them off and they're going to be shooting rockets at you before trying to land anything else. Looks like we're cleaning that out a little bit with the help of friendlies. You got two boats now. You have to make a decision about which one you want to take out. It looks like you get a little bit of help from the air, but not quite still. Still a few enemies up there. Running that ammo low, probably prematurely. I'd be a little bit worried about what's coming in the form of boats from the enemy spawn. Still got one up at least. Looks like the friendly little bird got taken out. Still trying to conquer off these enemies in here. They're surprisingly resilient. They've got crocodile blood going on. There's a few more hit markers on that guy. It's not doing much work with those TV-guided missiles. Not a really great building killer. It looks like the enemy team is firmly in control of this point, so you're taking your life in your own hands by spending time here. Yep, starting to get those rockets shot at you. You can see that there's at least one enemy there in that tow launcher. He's looking for a shot and he doesn't quite get it. Probably going to get taken out here. Nope, but his launcher blows up. Almost gets a TV missile off on the chopper. Nope, not quite. But it does look like the chopper's pretty confused right now and circling around like an idiot. And the occupant chooses to bail rather than to do anything else with this. So a little bit of backup here from the second boat. The enemy team is starting to take back a few points, still not in control of this map and even remotely. You can see that attack jet there in the air, that might become a problem. And it looks like we have at least a TV missile coming in. He had to bail on that one. Uh-oh, 1 health. Time to blow. Oh, not going to get this off in time. Ooh, almost takes him out. Yeah, I got an unfortunate unfortunate dive there. He might have been able to save that if he had gotten out on the right side and been able to not get underneath it. And it looks like we're taking a couple of hits from behind, but health is going up, so who knows. Kind of weird hit markers there, and we're getting in on a point now. I'd probably pull out an actual weapon other than the torch. Right now I'd be trying to make it to that seawall as quickly as possible so you can get a little bit of cover. Looks like we're still using that AKU-12 with the silencer, which is really going to help out for trying to ambush all these enemies that are here. I probably wouldn't have jumped up here just in case enemies were looking down on here since you're out in the open now. I probably would have stick to the cover a little bit more. We can see that there's plenty of enemies still on the mini-map, but at the same time they're looking away. There's one that's sort of straggling around. I'd probably steer clear of this. Yep, you can see that the building's coming down. Manages to take that guy out. Maybe a premature reload there, not knowing where the other guy is. Sees him here in the water. Looks like the guy goes behind the pillar there. Manages to get taken out. Now, I'm not sure if the enemy was trying to preserve himself or preserve himself as a spot that his squad could spawn on, but if it was the latter, good on him. And that's a good bit of advice for anybody. If you are the last person in the squad, make sure you stay alive so your squad members can still spawn on you. For example, if that guy had stayed alive, we would have had an entire squad on top at this point instead of just one guy. Looks like it's time for a little bit of chopper action. We can see that there's a boat behind the point that just pulled in, so we're probably going to have to focus up on that. It looks like we have two boats now. Taking a quick look at the setup there, it looks like we're primarily set up for taking out air with this thing instead of being able to take out boats. This is generally the setup I like running with this, simply because I like being able to take out other helicopters and other air vehicles, which are my primary threat in the helicopter, not so much vehicles, which I can usually get out of the way of. And as you can see here, you can still do a little bit of work on boats with those guns as long as you keep them trained on them. And like I said earlier, this is where burst would come in handy on that boat, because now that boat's disabled and in real trouble. Those 25 and 30 millimeters, unless you can land every shot, just really do not do the job. And that boat's pretty much a sitting duck at this point. I think if I were one of the guys who had just jumped out, I probably would have jumped out into one of the jet skis as opposed to just jumping in the water like that. And it looks like we have one poor guy just treading water here, hoping that the chopper doesn't see him going under, coming back up for a breath. Yeah, if I were that guy, I would just suicide at this point, because it doesn't make any sense to just sort of sit and tread water out in the middle of nowhere. You're not going to do your team any good, and that helicopter's eventually going to get you. And of course it does. You know, sometimes to be a jerk as a helicopter, I just let those people sit out in the middle of the ocean and contemplate their fate. If I kill them, they're going to respawn somewhere, but if I leave them out in the middle of the ocean, they're just going to sit out there forever. And here we can see a rib that could have been a danger, but not quite. That minigun on the rib is really well equipped to taking out helicopters and aircraft in general, and if you can get a good long chain of bullets in on your target, you can do a lot of damage against aircraft with that rib. However, in a head-to-head battle, the rib versus the light helicopters, I probably would favor the light helicopters. Mostly because they can take just a little bit more damage than the rib. Almost gets a boop off on that guy, but not quite. Looks like a friendly soldier finished the job for him. Now, if you're feeling pretty secure, you can always take the helicopters and hover around these points and try to capture them, but I generally find that's a really dangerous proposition, especially if the enemy team is anywhere nearby. I really couldn't recount the number of times that I've either taken a helicopter out or been taken out myself while trying to pull off this hover maneuver. It's just far too tempting a target for an RPG, straw, small, whatever have you. And here's where those missiles are going to come in handy against this enemy transport helicopter. We're only firing off one so that we can blow the ECM or flares, it looks like. Following up with guns, it looks like the enemy team bailed out of that one. He's going to be up against an entire squad full of infantry. That guy has no chance. Meanwhile, it looks like the rest of the Russian teammates have gone to the center of the island and they're pushing A, B, and C. That guy gets unsurprisingly taken out. Looks like that barrel's about to explode if I were to get away from that. Almost accidentally blew up a few teammates there by setting that barrel on fire. Right now, Rav's circling around, trying to see if he can get a shot on this infantry. Not quite. Decides to bug out when he sees this boat on the map. The enemy boat has already shown us he doesn't have burst, so he's probably an easy target. With the exception of that TV missile that just went flying by Rav's face. Yeah, this would only be a problem if that other boat also joined the fight, which it looks like it's not doing. And right now, this boat's stopped in the water while he's shooting off TV missiles and is an easy bit of prey for this little bird. Or rather, Z11 in this case. Oop, Rav got a little bit too close to the base AA there, started taking a few rounds. Not quite close enough to get taken out, though. Another thing to consider when you're in aircraft is to try and avoid the engagement envelope of the enemy base AA. Now, it won't shoot at you if you're not spotted, but if the entire enemy team is on their boat, the chances are that you're going to be spotted increase dramatically. And it looks like with 18 tickets on the board that the enemy team is starting to try and rally here in the center. This probably would have been a better play about, 500 tickets ago. Rav gets a good kill on that guy there, tries to follow up with this guy, he gets to the side there, whoa, and manages to take him out anyways. That's the advantage of having a 150 millisecond ping, folks. Looks like there's a few more enemies trying to line up a shot on him here with a missile. The ECM easily deflects it. ECM's a little bit more effective in helicopters than it is in jets, almost takes these guys out, but that's the end of the round. That's the end of this round. The enemy team never really got anything going and was pretty much outclassed the entire round. Rav primarily stuck to vehicles and it was pretty clear that he was adept at using each one of them. There were a couple of times where Rav left openings for the enemy team that they could have exploited if they were decent, but that didn't arise very often in this game. I think if I were to leave any advice behind, it would be to work on the awareness of when enemy vehicles are up or will be respawning. As I said earlier, if the enemy team were competent, that could have been the point at which the game turned around. All it takes is one expert vehicle pilot. That's it for this episode of Over Your Shoulder. If you're interested in getting yourself spectated and commented on at some point in the future, be sure to message me on Facebook, Twitter, or send me an invite on Battlelog. Unfortunately, I cannot spectate consoles. I try to get to everybody eventually, but my schedule isn't always the same and I always spectate in secret. Next week I'm going to be taking a look at Hardline again in Over Your Shoulder, and I'm going to be changing it up each week from here on out. If you're new around here, please take a look at my channel and consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.